If I'm your governor between 2019 and 2027, and I'm going to work really hard on long-range plans that are in place and that we can achieve during my term. I don't think it's responsible to talk about so far in the future that we can't really even understand where we're going to go. So my promise to you with respect to any transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy is it's going to be realistic within the term that I have, and it's going to be based on collaboration with industry and with people who care about our environment and conservation. One thing I do know as the Chief Operating Officer is we monitor air quality, we monitor water quality, we set concrete goals that are achievable. So that's number one. We've got to be realistic and we've got to collaborate with industry. Second, we've done a lot of work. The Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission just about 3 weeks ago issued new regulations with respect to flow lines, with mapping, that I think give people great assurance. It was a unanimous decision. As you know, almost all of our boards and commissions are made up of people with diverse political points of view, diverse expertise. And so to have a unanimous recommendation that came out of the COGCC, I think is really should be reassuring to all of you. Local communities, I think, have an important role, but I think as business people, the patchwork of regulations that could be passed could be really concerning. The state has a role to try to convene those communities, to convene industry, to make sure there's public safety and health, number one. That is what the Hickenlooper administration is focused on. And also ease of doing business, because at some point, and I'm hoping we're going to get to a broader regulatory conversation, which is what is our responsibility as the leader of this state to make sure that it's easy to do business in Colorado and to reduce unnecessary regulations, but still to protect public safety and health.
Thank you. Congressman Polis?
Well, I'm excited to be writing on a platform of a plan to help our state reach 100% renewable energy by 2040. Michael and I are the only two that have a plan to do that, because our state can and should be in the leadership role in building out the renewable energy economy. It's not only about climate, it's not only about clean air, it's about green jobs that can never be outsourced. I launched my campaign in Pueblo, Colorado, highlighting 700 manufacturing jobs at Vestas manufacturing wind turbines today. There's going to be tremendous opportunities for job growth and economic growth. There's going to be savings for consumers, and yes, there'll be cleaner air and better health for Colorado residents. With regard to the extraction industry, I think that we need to do a better job setting the parameters around local control. And I think that everybody will benefit from that, because the only people that benefit from the status quo, which is vague, are attorneys. And I'm sure there's some in the room, but these things get fought out in the jury box rather than through elected politicians who are hired to solve these problems. So yes, I want to formalize and provide certainty around the parameters around local control. And of course, in any discussion around fracking, in any discussion around any industry in Colorado, of course we should put health and safety first. There's no question we need to look at the science to make sure that we put the Coloradan health and safety first with regard to any type of industrial activity. There's nothing different about any particular type of extraction activity than any other kind of industrial activity that might have ramifications for health and safety in an objective, scientific way, taking a step back from the heat of the moment to make sure we do it correctly, to help make sure that we can continue to grow all sectors in our state. And of course, I'm excited to work with every industry to create jobs and economic opportunity in our state.
So to follow up, you said we need to set specific parameters around local control. That statement itself could be broad-reaching. You may see myself as vague. What specific parameters do you want to set?
Well, the good news is I've written extensively on this topic for many years, so you can look exactly where I stand to have 100% certainty. So I did support a effort that we were trying to do legislatively around parameters of local control, largely encapsulating the Bowen-Edwards decision into statute, moving some of the parameters. We didn't get the special session that we were seeking. We didn't get the bill passed. I would look forward to working with the legislature around defining the parameters of local control in this state. Again, I think that all sides will benefit from that, whether it's a small town that knows they can't afford a costly lawsuit, even if they might prevail, or it's operators that would be able to save money from legal fights, knowing whether they'll win or lose with the certainty that we can provide only in statute, only in working with people in the state legislature to get done.
Thank you. All right, this time I'm going to turn to the audience for a polling hands question here. I know a lot of you are employers. How many of you provide health insurance for your employees? And how how many of you are concerned about the rising costs of healthcare? All right, to our panel. Healthcare is an incredibly nuanced subject, but as you see in the realm of business, it is the cost of care that stands out as a concern. What could you as a leader do to control the high costs of care, and explain as you lay out this position how exactly that would control costs? Treasurer Kennedy?
So we're all paying too much for healthcare. You are, folks that are purchasing in the individual market. I hear on this campaign, particularly if you're over on the western slope, I hear from families who are spending $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month on their health insurance. We face some of the highest healthcare costs in the country. In fact, we've got several counties here in Colorado that actually have the highest premiums in the entire country. It is why I am proposing that Colorado open up our public health insurance plan as an option in the marketplace. Open up Medicaid for anybody to purchase. Wouldn't cost taxpayers no tax dollars. People would pay premiums for Medicaid in the same way they would buy a private plan. They could purchase Medicaid. Why would we do that? We can offer Medicaid for less than what's currently being offered in the private market in an awful lot of counties in this state. That's because we have a very large pool. We have over 1.3 million people enrolled in our Medicaid program. So we have leverage to negotiate more affordable rates with providers across the state. We also have higher efficiency, lower administrative costs because of the economies of scale of that program, and there isn't a profit margin in Medicaid. We should also open up the plans that we offer our state employees to provide more choice and more competition in the marketplace. For everybody who's offering insurance plans in the market, they then have to respond. And I think it gives them the pressure to also control costs and negotiate better rates with providers across the state so that we don't see these crazy escalating healthcare costs that we've seen. I would love to see Congress act on healthcare. Everything I see coming out of Washington would simply roll back the progress we've made in covering more people with health insurance. And we can be really proud of our success here in Colorado and nationally. 94% of the people in our state today have health insurance. That is a huge accomplishment. We're not going back to the days when 20% of the population wasn't covered. For kids, it's even better, 97.5% covered. I helped start the Child Health Plan here in Colorado. As we go forward, we need to make sure that we're controlling costs, not reducing access to care.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor Lynn?
Well, I've had a unique perspective in healthcare. I've been a purchaser of healthcare for a large employer, a payer of healthcare as an insurer, a provider of healthcare in a hospital system, and a patient. And I think we are all guilty, quite frankly, of contributing to the high cost of healthcare, including patients, because we've got to focus on prevention. It is too easy to take a pill to deal with high blood pressure or to deal with obesity, when if we invest the money at the beginning, we can actually prevent some of our healthcare costs. But that's not the solution to all of the problems. You know, as businesses, you are paying for the 5% of people in Colorado who are still not insured. And they are sick, they are avoiding care, they're going to the emergency room, and we need to get universal coverage in Colorado. That is not a single payer system, it's very different. It simply means you've got 100,000 people who could take Medicaid today, but they're not on Medicaid. Some of them are afraid to sign up for Medicaid because of other immigration issues, and we've got to break through that barrier. We've got to make sure that everybody has insurance. You're paying for it as businesses. When I was on the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce Board, we actually produced a study that showed it was adding $1,100 to your costs for health care to have people uninsured. Secondly, transparency is really important. We use that word a lot, kind of getting overused, but the truth is, I heard someone from Eagle County say, and he was part of Eagle County government, I left Eagle County to go get procedures done in Denver because it was cheaper, and that kind of transparency we've got to deal with, and we've got to make sure providers are doing what they ought to be doing. The third thing is, last year I did work with the legislature, we didn't get this bill through, to use the state of Colorado as a big purchaser. That happens across the country. 26 states use their state employee plan as a big, I'm sorry to say this, hammer to say, we've got to control costs, we can be creative. We could have hundreds of thousands of people in our school districts, in our communities, and that would reduce what they have to do. The burden of paying for health care could be borne by the state in collaboration with those districts, and we would be more efficient. We had Republican sentiment and support for that. I would continue to push on that issue if I am the governor, to make the state be one of the most efficient and effective purchasers of health care.
And just a quick follow-up to that, when you're talking about opening up the state's health plan, are you talking about just to the local governments that you mentioned, or to everyone in the state?
I think the first step, quite frankly, this was a big thing for people to swallow here, as in spite of the fact that, as I said, 26 states already do this. So I think the first step is opening it up to local communities, counties, towns, school districts. When you do that, you are talking about hundreds of thousands of people being able to get health care more efficiently and more effectively. And I'd be happy to look at small businesses as well in that solution. But I think the first step, we've got to get the legislature to agree to even allow that to happen.
Thank you. Congressman Polis?
So, you know, big picture, our country does this terribly and wrong. People die, people pay too much, the burden's on businesses. Every other Western industrialized country has a form of universal health care. No other country puts that burden on businesses and the business community. And as an entrepreneur, starting small companies, I know how difficult it is when you have 4 or 5 people to all of a sudden have to figure out, oh, now we have to start and administer a benefits program rather than focus on our core competency or growing our business, whatever sector you're in. All of a sudden we have to bring in all this paperwork and figure this out. The overhead administrative costs and yes, the financial costs put American businesses, put Colorado businesses at a disadvantage. That's why I'm so strong supporter of universal single-payer health care. I sponsored the Medicare for All bill in Congress since the day I got there. And yes, Colorado can move forward. We can no longer take marginal reforms as an excuse not to take bold action that will make Colorado businesses more competitive. What a great thing if in a consortium with several other Western states, or Colorado alone, finds a way to remove this burden from businesses. So you no longer have to spend 10, 15, 20% of payroll on healthcare costs. Entrepreneurs don't have to worry about taking that risk and losing a job and leaving a job at a big company, leaving their benefits behind. We want portability in the workforce because we want to make sure that we can encourage mobility to where every individual's talents are best recognized in the economy. We can do this much better as a country. We can do this much better as a state. And yes, I'm a pragmatist. I supported the Affordable Care Act and worked with President Obama as a step forward, and I support many of the marginal reforms that were discussed by some of the other folks who talked here today. But I will not rest until we have the largest possible risk pool and we cover everybody through universal care.
So to follow up to that, we had this question on the ballot in 2016. It barely eked out 20%. Was that proposal for universal health care wrong, or are the people just wrong?
No, I think the proposal had a lot of flaws, and I did not at that time support that proposal. I support the Medicare for All proposal nationally. It's better to do nationally. Of course we can step up and do it in Colorado. I think one of the shortcomings of that initiative is that it didn't engage the business community on the ground floor. I think it's very important to make sure that this is seen as a plus by the business community, that we are meeting a pain point that I face as an employer, which is not only healthcare costs, but administering healthcare costs and administering benefit programs. Not that private insurers won't exist, of course they will, and many employers will continue for retention and to attract the best employees to offer benefits above and beyond the basic package that every Coloradan will have. And many people, just as people who are on Medicare today, many of them have supplemental insurance, and that's a great thing. But we ought to be honest about that basic level of care for everybody, because if you don't have coverage today and you wind up in an emergency room, you get treatment, but those costs are shifted onto other people. Why don't we do it on the front end more efficiently? And I think that we can do that as a state. We can do that through a multi-state consortium outside of Washington.
Thank you. Senator Johnson.
Thank you so much. You all obviously know the problem, so I'm going to jump to my theory of the solutions. I think there are 3 major issues we have to push here. One is competition, the other is costs, and the third is choices. So on competition, what we know is many of the reasons why we have some of the most expensive healthcare premiums in the country, and the western slope and eastern plains are there are monopoly providers. Right? There is actually no competition in those markets. And so I proposed offering a public option for folks to buy into Medicaid in places where there are not affordable care offered. So if you're paying more than 10% of your income for your insurance, that would trigger the opportunity for you to buy into Medicaid. That allows you to bring competition to those markets that are not competitive. It also allows you to preserve successful markets that are currently competitive without necessarily disrupting those with a new public option in those existing markets. So I think that is a more nuanced solution. Second one is you do have to address dropping costs. I think there are a couple of components there. One is we've supported kind of a belt and suspenders approach because we want to incentivize more and more providers to come to hard-to-serve locations by giving them additional points on RFPs to cover either state employees or administer state Medicaid programs. And for those folks who don't provide in those locations, to have them pay into reinsurance pools that make it possible for the providers that do go there to be able to operate successfully. And focusing on, as Donna said, I agree, focusing on how do you drive the discussion of informed consumers by giving them price transparency about the costs. And so we proposed out-of-pocket cost calculators that would allow you to know what your cost would be, both total and what your personal cost would be. The third one that I think is tremendously important is this question of choices. What are the choices people make that actually have a profound influence on the cost of healthcare to the system? Right now, we know is still the two largest drivers of cost in the state for health are still tobacco use and obesity. And so what we have to look at is what role does the state play in facilitating both keeping young people off of tobacco early in their lives when they're most susceptible to starting it and starting lifetime practices that are going to drive up their costs and shorten their life expectancy, and how do we put in place the practices in every interaction you have with the state government to increase mobility, recreation, outdoor activity for young people to prevent them from becoming obese and driving long-term costs there. I think those choices also really matter if you want to drive down healthcare.
And let me get you to just bear down on one of those things. You talk about incentives to bring doctors to underserved areas. What can the state offer?
I think it's appropriate for the state to offer tax incentives to attract providers to rural areas the same way I was the sponsor of Jumpstart, which is legislation to entice businesses to move to rural parts of the state and to open in rural parts of the state. So we say if you're an entrepreneur looking at starting a business, we would prefer that you choose Grand Junction over Denver right now because you don't see economic development coming the same way. That's also true for healthcare, and it's not just true for primary care physicians, it's true for behavioral health, it's true for mental health. Right? I was in Grand County a few weeks ago and talking to folks there about the fact that they only had one mental health provider that was in there for the entire Jackson County, for the entire county, and that provider died 6 months ago, which meant for 6 months there's literally been not a single mental health provider in the entire county. The closest place you can go is a drive to Grand Junction. So I think that is a crisis where you want to say the state has an interest in attracting both mental health providers as well as primary care physicians.
Thank you. All right, we're going to switch up the format one more time. We're going to go to a series of individual questions based on the things that you all have espoused on your campaign or in your careers. Let me start with Lieutenant Governor Lynn. You are the only person, as you've mentioned, on the stage who is in the current administration. I think a lot of people in this room know what the Hickenlooper administration has been like on business. Tell us one particular way you'd be different than Governor Hickenlooper on business issues.
I think one way I'd be different on business is I would accelerate and expand some of our work on regulatory reform. As you may know, we have cut the number of regulations in the state by half. We have saved businesses millions of hours and improved a lot of performance when it comes to how long does it take to get a license, how long does it take to get a permit. Are there unnecessary steps that we've asked you to take? But you're not just confronted with state regulations. You're confronted with local regulations and district regulations where you have a fire district or a sanitation district across the state. And so what I've envisioned as your governor is to not only continue that work on regulatory reform to make it easy for you to do business, but to bring in local communities so that you understand you don't have to go to multiple places. There is one place where we can inform you what you need to do as a business.
Thank you. Representative Congressman Polis, you have been a major congressional supporter of legalized marijuana and hemp. What does marijuana policy look like under a Polis governorship, and why is growth of this industry not problematic as some states say it is?
Well, look, growth is great across all sectors. I mean, why shouldn't business people make money rather than criminal cartels? Why shouldn't we do more to keep marijuana out of the hands of kids? So these are all steps that our state has done and is doing. Underage use of marijuana is down, tax revenues are up, it's created tens of thousands of jobs, directly and indirectly. And I'm excited, and we need somebody who's ready to stand up to President Trump and Attorney General Sessions day one. I am. I stood up to them in Washington, I'll stand up to them as governor, just tell the story of how we've created an industry from the ground level here in our state, an industry that has important jobs in the ag sector and grow operations, not to mention industrial hemp, jobs in processing, jobs at the retail side. And it's an important part of the Colorado success story. So I'll be excited to continue to work with the cannabis industry. I think there's a difference with Governor Hickenlooper. I think he's done a fine job implementing it. In me, just as you will have for all of our sectors, you'll have more of a booster and a cheerleader to work with, not the question of how can we make it work, but the question of how can we work with our administration to help this industry and any industry grow and succeed in our state. Putting health and safety first, doing more to make sure that around driving safety, around keeping cannabis products out of the hands of minors, except if they're indicated medically. Yes, we can do a better job in our state, and frankly, I'm excited to help lead the way and build that coalition to get it done, not just with the cannabis industry, but with a broad sector of every part of our economy.
Thank you. Senator Johnson, you suggested in your campaign offering a retraining program for people whose jobs are becoming obsolete, offering to pay for their retraining while asking them to volunteer in return for the state. Explain a little bit more about this, and also explain how the state can pay for this.
You bet. This idea is called the Colorado Promise, and it's focused on the strategy you discussed earlier, which is how do you get folks the skills they need at any stage of their career just in time for jobs that are emerging. And how do you make that training more cost efficient and shorter? And so our focus is that it serves like a civilian version of the National Guard, which is nothing's free in Colorado, you got to work for it, but if the state's going to support you in getting the skills you need, you ought to provide some service to the state over time to help build the state's infrastructure. And so it's attracted such diverse support as folks from General Stanley Crystal to Meg Whitman to folks who have worked on economic development and said long-term this is the right policy. The way we pay for it is that we also make sure to specify this. It's about $42, $43 million a year. We have two sources to pay for this. One is I helped sponsor the Amazon tax almost 6 years ago, which said that if internet retailers that are competing with mom and pop businesses in Colorado ought to collect and remit the same sales tax. We were in court for 5 or 6 years. That finally got passed. Generated about $5 million of revenue last year. We'll grow to about $150 million over the next 2 to 3 years. And so we've taken 50% of that up to $50 million to pay for it. Second is, and Ken Weil knows this, is I also passed a bill called Pay for Success Financing, which is how do you use the investments the state generates to support it. So if you are a barista at Starbucks and you're making $20,000 a year, and you go through our training program to become a nurse in the rural area, and you're now making $40,000 a year, that additional $20,000 that you're making in income is now generating new income tax to the state. And so we allocate some of the new revenues that come from the new job you got from the new training you received to help pay for that program to make it sustainable long term. And as you know, the natural market is going to drive these training programs to be shorter and shorter and more skills-based, which means we have an incentive to make sure we're focusing on the outcomes of these programs. What are their placement rates? What are your average compensations? How long do you stay in those jobs? So the state is helping make sure we are channeling people into training programs that are best preparing you for the jobs they're waiting.
Thank you. And Treasurer Kennedy, you've stated you want to launch an affordable housing fund in Colorado. Similar to what I asked Senator Johnson, explain how it would work, and also explain how the state could possibly raise enough to make a significant dent in our affordability problem.
So affordable housing is a challenge for businesses all across our state. As you're hiring folks, they can't afford to live in the communities in which you're trying to hire them, and I know it limits the pool of people that you have who are willing to come to work because they can't afford to live in the community. So when I was the CFO in the city of Denver, I helped develop the city's affordable housing fund, building, constructing 6,000 affordable units. And as governor, I had proposed creating a state affordable housing fund. We're one of the few states in the country that doesn't have one. I proposed seeding it with $50 million from surplus unclaimed property funds. There are a lot of affordable housing projects that are on hold because they have a pretty small financing gap. When you bring in the federal tax credits, that are available, the state tax credits that are available. Many of these projects are close to being financed, but with high land costs in Colorado, they face a financing gap, and for a pretty small investment, subsidy from the city, from the state, from a collaborative partnership between the public and private sector, we can get these projects off the ground and have more affordable housing units built in communities across the state.
Great, thank you. And for our last general question, I'm going to go to a 1-minute lightning round, starting with Congressman Polis. Please give us one U.S. governor, past or present, whom you would like to emulate if elected, and why?
U.S. governor? Well, look, I mean, I would look to Colorado's own iconic Roy Romer, who, of course, is a good friend, and I think he did a great job. You know, he was the governor during much of my youth, of course, really the only governor I know, probably our last governor to be able to serve 3 terms. I'm glad that none of us have to serve 3 terms. 2 is plenty. He's a great governor. So I think that, you know, you need the forward-looking vision. I have many, by the way, I would enter office with relationships already with many other governors. I think that's another advantage. My good friend Michelle Lujan Grisham is running in New Mexico. My former colleague Jay Inslee is governor of Washington State. So I think together we can accomplish a lot of these goals. And I have some of these relationships. I look forward to building them even more. Because I think that we are, you know, stronger when we can work together with our neighboring states and our western states on common goals for healthcare, common goals for renewable energy, common goals through education. Like, for instance, under Roy Romer, the Western governors started the college, the Western Governors College, which does a tremendous job providing opportunity for kids across the western states.
Thank you. Senator Johnston?
Thank you. I think we've talked a lot about business climates and how we create those. I think we also can't ignore there's a larger climate in America right now that's probably more politically divisive than any I've certainly experienced in my adult life. And so my choice would actually be Ralph Carr, who the building next door is named after, who was a Republican governor of Colorado who came into office in the middle of World War II, when there was this big debate about internment camps, whether or not Japanese Americans were really American citizens or not, whether or not we should treat them as foreign enemies, whether or not we should intern them. And he very courageously stood up and said, if you want us to take these folks in our state, we will. Not because we believe they're criminals, because we believe they're citizens. And actually, more than that, we'll work to try to have them stay in this state and make this their home. When you look now at the generation of Japanese Americans who first came for internment and now have stayed and grown businesses and communities in Colorado, there is no doubt we're a richer, deeper, fuller state because of it. And so he lost re-election. But when the Denver Post looked back and said, who is the single most important Coloradan of the 20th century, they said Ralph Carr. Because in a moment where America's natural instincts are to divide us, I think Ralph Carr stood up and said that is not Colorado's legacy, and I'll make sure we stay true to those values in difficult times.
Thank you. Treasurer Kennedy.
I was going to mention Ralph Carr as well. Interesting, 2 of us pick a Republican governor. And if you read Ralph Carr's history, he knew because of the strong polling in the state and nationally against the Japanese. He knew if he took that position that he would lose office. And he made the decision out of his own personal conscience to go down and meet the train when the Japanese families arrived. And with cameras flashing, he hugged them and welcomed them to Colorado. And that's the kind of moral leadership that I believe this country needs and this state certainly deserves. I'm also going to copy Congressman Polis in calling out Roy Romer. I started my career working for Roy Romer, and I just loved his leadership style. You know, he would call a broad, diverse coalition of people into his office. I was staffing him with very different viewpoints and seat everybody around that office. And, you know, at times would say, we're closing the doors and ordering pizza, and nobody is leaving until we got a path forward. And I know you're not going to agree with each other on everything, but I need to hear, and I need all of us to have this conversation so we can move forward. The issues that we are talking about up here are really challenging. They don't end up on the governor's desk unless they're challenging. And different communities around the state have very different perspectives and very different experiences. And it's critically important that we bring all of those voices in together and we build those partnerships between industry and business and the nonprofit community and the academic community, and folks from the far reaches of rural Colorado, and folks from right here on 17th Street, if we're going to make progress going forward.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor Lynn.
Well, this is a highly unfair question.
You don't have to say Carl or Romer.
John, I'm talking to you right now. I know you're listening. Obviously, I work for the governor, and I made a conscious choice to do that, to leave the private sector and come to work for this state and for John Hickenlooper. So I admire him. I admire his vision. I admire his tenacity, but I'm not John Hickenlooper. But I will say, he has done a fabulous job bringing together diverse people to the table. And I see him agonize over problems, whether they are clemency decisions, whether they are issues around the death penalty. And so I admire him tremendously. It would be silly if I said Roy Romer, because everybody's saying it, but I have met with Governor Romer, and I know a lot of people that have worked for him, and there isn't one person who says something unkind about him. But I'm going to say Ann Richards from Texas. And I'm going to say that, obviously, because she was a woman governor. And we've not had a woman governor in this state. And she was a firecracker, as you all know. She was tough. But she also was the governor of Texas. And as your governor, I'm going to recognize that this is a very diverse state. I've worked for a Republican president and a Republican mayor. We're a purple state, and any governor has to make sure that he or she recognizes the complexity of our state and all the people that live here.
Thank you. And that'll bring us to our final 1-minute closing statement. Mention something that we didn't talk about. Mention something to leave these potential voters with. And Senator Johnston, we'll start with you.
Thank you all so much for being here. It was a great conversation. I remember growing up in a small town, when you wanted to get something done, I never could go back and tell you the party registration of the folks I grew up with, of my parents or community members. It was a question of if you wanted to build a library or a hospital or a road, there was just a question of do you want to make a point or do you want to make a difference? I think that was the spirit I grew up with. And I look around this room, there are a lot of folks in this room I've worked on a lot of things with over the last 10 years, and I couldn't tell you most of your party affiliations, because that was not the question I asked when I came in the door. The question was, here's a problem we want to try to solve. How are we going to go about solving it? Whether it was criminal justice reform or rural economic development or education. And so I would say when you're looking forward, you're looking at who is going to be the governor that has a chance to sit down at a table and solve hard problems without regard to ideology. And I think that requires a lot more problem solving than bomb throwing. And so I'm very proud of the fact that in my 7 years in the Senate, I sponsored more than 150 bills. More than 120 of those bills all signed into law by the governor. And more than 100 of those all have Republican co-sponsors. Because my belief is if you're going to build something that's good enough for the entire state, you ought to be able to bring folks into that idea that represent all parts of the state. So I think that's the way I've led as a teacher, as a school leader, as a business leader, as a state senator. What I would do as governor, I'd love the chance to do that with you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. Treasurer Kennedy.
Well, thank you all again for having us here this morning. Really appreciate the opportunity. And it's been a privilege for me to be a part of the team that has helped lay the foundation to build one of the top economies in this country. One of the top business climates in the country. It's the CFO for the city of Denver. It was ranked as one of the best financially run cities in the country. I have helped lead some of the largest economic development projects in this region, including in rural Colorado, $1 billion investment in rural infrastructure throughout the state. I've helped make our government more efficient and effective. As CFO of Denver, we cut the wait times at the PMV in half by bringing in efficiency and looking at our business opportunities. And you will see me as governor really focus on the people of this state as customers. As we look ahead, we have some work to do. I will lead as your governor to build a bipartisan coalition to pass permanent labor reform in this state so that we can make the investments in our education system, so we can have an education system that we can all be proud of, that gives kids growing up here the ability to benefit from the great success that we're bringing here. I'll work with you to keep healthcare accessible and affordable to everyone in our state. And I will work with you to make sure that we protect this beautiful state that we love, that we keep Colorado the place that we love in the face of rapid population growth and growth pressures, that we protect everything that is special about this state and gives us an incredible economic advantage and opportunity for the years ahead. So thank you all for your work, for your partnership, and for having us here this morning.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor Lynn.
Well, thank you. And as you can hear from everybody on the panel, we have a lot in common, but there are some differences. I think if you want to walk away with 2 words about me, it's experience and pragmatism. I'm applying for a very small promotion from Lieutenant Governor and Chief Operating Officer to Governor. And I've worked for 40 years to get to this place. It is not a place I ever expected to be. I am really honored to be part of this team of people who are trying to sell to you why we think we would be the next governor. But what you'll get from me is a proven track record as an executive running very large organizations, but also thinking strategically. You can't run something and deliver results if you don't have ideas about how you need to lead. And you need to lead this state, not just manage the state, not just think about laws and policy and issues like that, but the state of Colorado does really important work for you every day, and they need a leader. And I believe I've earned those leadership chops in years of working in very large and complicated organizations, and I'd love your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, Congressman Polis.
Politicians are a lot of talk. I'm more about getting things done. So I didn't just complain about the issue of there not being enough opportunities for young people to learn English. I started a charter school to do it, and I ran it as superintendent for several years. There's 3 campuses in Colorado, 2 in New Mexico, thousands of students who serve from it. I didn't just talk about, oh, flowers are too expensive and they arrive wilted. I started a company to disintermediate the floral supply chain and get flowers directly from the grower to the end consumer. It grew to over 200 employees. In Congress, I work as part of the No Labels Problem Solvers Caucus with 22 Democrats, 22 Republicans on practical, common sense solutions to get things done. So I think we're past time for talk, it's time for action. I have a proven track record of not just bold ideas, but the proven ability to get them done. And as your next governor, I'll do it, and I'd be honored to have your support. You can go to Polis for Colorado to sign up to support us and make a contribution, and I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Well, I think we should thank all of the candidates on stage for a debate, a forum, if you will, of ideas and thoughts.